Hey guys, how's it going? My name's Babs. Thanks for stopping by the channel. This is going to be a bit different type of video than I normally put up on my channel. Usually I'm a gaming channel, not a tips and tricks channel. But every now and then I like to peel back the curtain, give you a look under the hood, kind of show you what's going on behind the scenes. I get asked a lot how I edit my audio or what software I use, how I make my voice sound professional. And I thought that I would go ahead and take some time and show you guys my process for editing audio, as well as trying to give, if like you're a beginner and this is, you're trying to get into editing audio or making videos, or maybe you're really good at editing videos, but you haven't really done much with audio. This is going to be like a beginner level to building a foundation and kind of learning the basics of editing audio so that it's not quite as intimidating and you can actually see it's pretty fun. I don't think that I'm like a professional and I don't want to give anybody the wrong impression, but I know that if you are completely new to audio and you are eager to learn, that I can give you some great tips and I can give you a great head start on the appropriate way of approaching editing audio. So that's my goal. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take this bit here that I've been recording live and we'll start editing it. I'm going to edit it how I would normally edit it, and I will explain to you my process as well as give you some definitions and purposes of the tools that I'm using. So let's go ahead and get started. So whenever I'm recording an intro or an outro, I will go through and I'll cut out all of these spaces where I'm thinking or where I'm using pause filters like and and stuff like that, which I use a lot and it is a hard habit to break. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to cut out all of the pauses and stuff, and then I'll be back. I think I'm just going to take this first part here. We don't need a long recording for these examples. And another thing you might notice is maybe you came to this video because you're looking for some tips on how to edit audio better, and you're listening to my voice right now and you're like, that doesn't really sound all that good. I purposely did the bare minimum processing on my main voiceover for this entire video so that you can see the contrast between what I've edited and where it started. So that's why. Anyways, I'll be right back. All right, so I've cut out a lot of the pauses here, and as I pull these together, I just want to go over a couple things. First, what I believe to be the most important step in creating good audio or studio quality audio, professional audio, whatever you want to say, actually has nothing to do with editing audio. The first step is called mic etiquette, or at least that's what I call it. What mic etiquette is, there's a couple different parts to it, and I'll try not to forget any of the steps, but the main part to it is always remember that you have a very sensitive piece of audio equipment right in front of your face hole, and it's picking up all of your vernacular. That wasn't a very good way of explaining it, but basically you have audio equipment in front of you. Don't scream into it. For starters, you could damage your microphone, and you can also peak your microphone, which will destroy your audio signal. And you can also peak the software that you're using to record your voice. It's something that you'll become very good at if you're editing your own audio, because you can see how much simpler it is to edit audio when you don't have it peaking and distorting every 5 seconds. Repairing audio is a chore, so do yourself a favor, don't scream in your microphone, take care of your microphone, and you should be all right. So that's my first step on mic etiquette. The step 2 would be probably the distance that you should be away from your microphone when you're talking into it. Every microphone's a little bit different, but for most microphones, somewhere between 4 and 6 inches, I find, at least for me, that works out really well. So 4 to 6 inches. If you talk close to the microphone like this, then it's going to be a lot warmer sounding, more bass, less treble. Whereas if you talk far away, you'll get a lot of the reverb from an untreated room and a lot of tingy sound from empty pop cans all over your desk that you forgot to clean up. I'll be right back. So somewhere between 4 to 6 inches is a good starting point. All right, so my third tip is make sure you're not recording too loud. The most damaging thing to audio that can be irreparable is when you peak your software, like I mentioned before. What causes that is when you are recording too loud inside your software and you're peaking your software or you're maxing out your software. A lot of softwares will have built-in limiters and it's limiting your audio constantly. It'll sound awful, can't fix it. You're never going to get a professional sound from that type of recording. Record your audio quiet. The main reason for that is because we're in the digital era and you don't get a lot of quality loss when you record quietly and boost it up in post. You just don't when you're dealing with a digital signal like today's audio recordings, I guess. I don't know. There's probably a better term for that. But just record quietly. There's no reason to record loud. And I know I said that was my last tip, but I'll give one more tip that I just thought of. In OBS, you're able to put VSTs on your microphone. If you don't know what VSTs are, it stands for Virtual Studio Technology. And we're going to be seeing a lot of them throughout this video when I go to edit, and I'll go more into detail on each one of them. You can add them to OBS. What I recommend and what my rule of thumb is for myself, if you're streaming to like Twitch or you're doing a live broadcast, then I said that weird. Then yeah, you want to add all of your pre-processing so that your microphone sounds good to the live audience. But if you're recording for the sole purpose of creating a video and there's no live broadcast, then you want the absolute bare minimum of processing on your voice. And let me explain why. If you think of audio and you compare it to video, let's say you're out recording some shots outside and you take this, let me draw a picture in your brain. You're at the top of a mountain and you're just recording some B-roll and you start messing with the contrast and the gamma and the saturation in your camera. You get it looking really sharp and crisp in this one spot. And then you leave it there for the rest of the day while you go and record hours of footage. There's going to be parts that do not look good with the contrast that you just set it to. There's going to be parts where it's way too dark. There's going to be parts where it's way too bright. There's too much saturation. All of those things are very difficult to fix in post. And it would have been much, much easier to make neutral looking footage that has, low saturation and very low contrast. The blacks aren't very black. Making that look, you can make it look amazing in post. It's way easier to do that than it is to fix over-processed video footage. That correlates to audio. It's kind of the same way. If you have compression or you have an EQ that makes your voice sound really good and you test it for like 5 seconds, you're like, yep, that's good. And then you pull it in to make your video and it's messed up. Fixing that is a chore. It is not fun and it'll probably make you not want to edit audio anymore. So do yourself a favor, again, and just limit the amount of processing that you're doing on your voice if you're recording for a video. Like I said, if you're streaming, you don't really have an option. You want it to sound good right now, so that, that's okay. So what I do is I have one compressor in OBS and I have a limiter. The compressor is doing barely anything and the limiter is doing absolutely nothing. It's only there just in case something were to peak, which really doesn't ever happen. I don't do an EQ and I don't do a gate. And I find that to be very important for my videos because sometimes I'll do like a funny gag where I whisper or I talk quietly. If I have a gate in OBS, it's going to cut that out. I'm not going to be able to hear it in the recording. Whereas if I do it afterwards and I decide, oh, I want that part where I whisper over here in the video, where did it go? I remember doing it. I can go with in my DAW and I can automate my gate to turn off at that point so it doesn't cut it out. And I could never do that if I'm doing that before the recording. So it's pretty important. So that's why I'm saying that now. All right. So I've been going on a spiel for quite a bit now. A lot of the people that aren't interested in this at all have already left. So let's go ahead and get into editing the audio. I'll show you my secrets. Spoiler alert, I don't really have any secrets. A lot of what I do is very well known. And there's already videos out there similar to the video that I'm going to be making now. But for whatever reason, people still ask me how I edit my audio. There are some things that I do differently. So let's go over this. The DAW that I use, or the DAW stands for Digital Audio Workspace. I use Samplitude Pro. It's a lesser known DAW, but it's something I've been using since I was a kid and I'm very familiar with. It's pretty similar to Pro Tools. I edit all of my audio for my videos in my DAW. I have a lot more control over everything I want to do, and I can make the audio sound better in my DAW. You can edit your audio in Premiere Pro or Sony Vegas, whatever you use, your video editing software. Most of them will come with the tools that you need and that we're going to be going over. They are very bare bones, typically. I like to have the UI and like a visual indicator, especially for this video, so I can kind of show you guys what it's doing. So that's why I pull it into Samplitude instead of editing it in Premiere Pro. I've also had issues in the past where I go to export it and the audio just sounds all messed up and something happened during the export, and Premiere Pro won't play nice with a lot of the VSTs that I have purchased for editing audio. So it just works out better for me to export my audio. I export it from Premiere as a WAV file, and then I merge the audio and video together using FFmpeg. I'm not going to go over all of that in this video. So let's go ahead and start editing. I feel like I've been ranting a lot. I'm sorry, but I am a talker. I like to talk, especially about this stuff, because I think it's fun. So first, we will do a compressor. This is the CLA 76. It's the first compressor that I use in my vocal chain. What's a vocal chain? A vocal chain is, if you look over here, hopefully I zoom in, I'm going to be adding effects and it's going to get longer and longer and longer. This is a vocal chain. So we have a compressor. I'm going to add another compressor after this. I can go ahead and do it now. So now you see it's added the compressor underneath that compressor. Then we're going to add EQs, gates, saturation, limiters, stuff like that. All these plugins is my vocal chain. And what happens is the audio signal will go through this compressor. It comes out of this compressor. Then it goes into this compressor, out this suppressor. And then it's going to go into an EQ, out the EQ, so on and so forth, like a chain. So the first thing I always do in my chain, and by the way, a lot of what I'm going to be telling you is subjective, and there are different ways to do it. Some people like to do it this way, others this way. A lot of that isn't really important when you're first starting out. You will develop the way that you like to do things as you continue to learn and progress in your audio editing experiences. For me, I always start out with a compressor first. Some people like the EQ first, so on and so forth. But what I do, and what this video is about is what I do, is add a compressor. So what is a compressor? You've probably heard of a compressor and you know that it makes your voice sound nice, but why? What does it do? A compressor takes the highest parts of your wave signal here. If you look here, the tall parts here, those are the loud parts. And then these shorter parts, like right here, those are the quieter parts. So what a compressor does is it compresses the loud parts. And then by doing that, you're actually lowering the average audio throughout the whole file and making it quieter. So then you boost it back up. And what that is essentially doing is boosting the lows and compressing the highs. So that's all that a compressor does at its basic form. When I learned what a compressor was, or what it actually did, I was pretty surprised that that's all it does. There are some cool, unique tricks and things that you can do with the attack and the release, which I'm showing you right here. So hopefully I'm zooming in on that in the video. The attack is how quickly it starts compressing, and the release is how quickly it stops compressing. So you can do cool things with that, but most of that is for like musical things. Like if you add a compressor on a snare drum, you can get like a pumping sound out of it that sounds pretty cool and musical. But for a voice, you actually don't really want to be able to hear the attack and release. So you want like a subtle one. You usually want like a faster attack and a medium to fast release so that you're not really hearing that. Because the whole purpose of it is to keep the dynamics of the video in check and make sure there aren't parts that are really loud and parts that are way too quiet. You still want dynamics. You still want parts that are loud and parts that are quiet, but you don't want it to be like a huge difference. And that's what a compressor does, essentially. That's its basic form. Again, there are tricks that you can use. We'll be using a little bit later down in the voice chain, but for now, we're just using a basic compressor. So what I usually do is you can come in here, you can pull out a preset, and it will kind of give you a baseline, but you don't want to just set a preset and forget it, think it's good and everything's great, ship it. It can actually destroy your audio. It can make it way too loud. It can make it way too quiet. It can be doing nothing at all, which is going to be our case here because I recorded really quietly. So I'm going to have to lower the threshold here. This actually isn't a great compressor to show that off. So let me just get this one set, then we'll jump into the next compressor. Okay, so I've set this up. So on this compressor, the one that you're using may have a similar UI. It just has an input and an output, and there's no threshold. Most compressors will have a threshold that you set. The next compressor I'm using does, but I thought it might be a good idea to show you both. Basically, the input and the output, what you're doing is you're squeezing the audio together. So you're raising the volume of it, and then you're bringing down the output, and that's what the compression is. And then you have your needle here so you can see what it's doing. I like to usually, for my very first compressor in my vocal chain, I like to aim for around -6 here on the needle at the loudest parts in my video. So what I'll go through here and I'll find a loud part. Like right here is a loud part. And then I'll kind of do that and I'll loop it and I'll just let it play over and over. And then I'll fiddle around with these until I get it where I want it. But every now and then I like to peel back the curtain. Every now and then I like to peel back the curtain. Every now and then I like to peel back the curtain. Every now and then I like to peel back the curtain. Every now and then I like to peel back the curtain. Every now and then I like to peel back the curtain. Every now and then I like to peel back the curtain. Every now and then I like to peel back the curtain. All right. So then what you can do is you can bypass it and it turns it off and then listen to it and then throw it on. And then you want to try to have the loudness be the same. That way you're not just making it louder. So let me show you. But every now and then I like to peel back the curtain. Every now and then I like to peel back the curtain. Every now and then I like to peel back the curtain. Every now and then I like to peel back the curtain. Every now and then I like to. So that's pretty good. But what could happen is at the default settings, this sounds way louder. And I don't want to boost the loudness quite yet. So I want what's called gain matching. You want the audio to come into your compressor and then go out at close to the same loudness as it came in, but now it's more compressed. Hopefully that makes sense. Yeah, so anyways, I'll go over this plugin just a little bit here. So this is the CLA 76. I know I'm doing this out of order. I'm sorry. I didn't really write a script for this. But CLA 76 is a real compressor. It's a real piece of hardware. And what this VST is doing is it's emulating that hardware. When they created this VST, they tried to emulate the sound of this particular compressor. Every piece of analog audio hardware kind of has its own characteristics and stuff. So that's why there are so many different compressors. Most of them, to the untrained ear, pretty much all sound about the same. So the fact that you don't have a fancy compressor like this shouldn't discourage you. There's not like a magic secret thing that this compressor does because I paid 20 bucks for it. It does the same thing that your compressor does. So don't feel discouraged because of that. Let's go into my next compressor. This is called the R compressor. I call it the R comp. It's the compressor that I use most of the time because it's got a really nice UI. You can really see what it's doing. It has a threshold here, which now I can go over what that is. I got it from Waves, and a lot of my plugins come from Waves because I have my license on my thumb drive and I don't want a bunch of different licenses. So I just bought them all from Waves for the most part. And I got some good deals on them during the sale. Anyways, R comp. What is a threshold? Okay, these are decibels up here. So -20 decibels. Whenever the audio crosses over -20 decibels, it'll start compressing it at whatever ratio I set here. So I usually go for 4.5. That tends to work out pretty good. If I increase this ratio, then it will do more compression pretty much. So usually you want things to be pretty subtle, so you don't want to do anything too crazy when you're dealing with voices and dialogue. When you get into music and drums and guitars, everything is out the window and it's completely different. But for dialogue, you want things to be subtle. So let's go ahead and listen to this and see how it sounds. Let's grab a new area so we're not listening to the same part constantly. We want to make sure it sounds good throughout. So let me just grab this area here. There's a couple loud parts here. And we'll listen to this. Audio or making videos, or maybe you're really good at editing videos, but you haven't really done much with audio or making videos, or maybe you're really good at editing videos, but you I think I'll lower the threshold a little bit. Let's try it at 23. Audio or making videos, or maybe you're really good at editing videos, but you haven't really done much with audio or making videos, or maybe you're really good at editing. Okay, so then the attack and release here, which I know you're probably curious about. I usually just leave it on the default for this one. I wish I would quit moving these windows around. I do this so much. It's such a pain when I go to edit the video. Anyways, the attack, like I went over, I'll go over it one more time really quick. The attack is how quickly the compressor starts getting to like the max compression, and release is how quickly it lets go to no compression. If you have a slow release, I can actually show you here. Let's bump this up to 5,000. It's probably going to act more of like a limiter now because it's never going to really make its way back down. Audio or making videos, or maybe you're really good at, see how it's kind of just saying here, you haven't really done much with audio or making, so that's way too slow of a release. And these are measured in milliseconds, just for the record. So I usually leave it at around 100, 200, sometimes 300 on the release, just depends. Really, you're not going to notice much of a difference for what we're doing. You want a pretty quick attack on vocals, and you want a medium to quick release. I usually just leave it at the default settings. I'll go in the presets, I'll type in, or I'll look for a vocal, I'll click on that, and I'll leave the attack and release the same, and I'll just edit the thresholds, the ratios, and the gain to what it needs to be. And then this stuff down here, they're not really important for what I'm trying to go over right now, and I don't want to overcomplicate it, but these are just different little settings that come in this particular compressor where you can give it a different sound. Warm would be it's compressing more of the higher pitched frequencies, and it makes it sound a little bit more warm. I usually just leave them all off. I'm just trying to do some basic compression right now, get my dynamics and my amplitudes under control before we move on. So speaking of move on, let's move on. Those are compressors. Let's get into an equalizer. Let me just use this equalizer. This is a basic equalizer, and I want to go over this first because this is going to be similar to what you're going to be looking at, a basic equalizer. And then we'll kind of step it up, and I'll kind of show you some other stuff that you could get if you want to, but don't necessarily come with your software that you're going to be using. This is where you might get into some debates with people about you should be doing your first EQ before compression, but as long as you're not boosting up the audio in your compression very much, like I didn't at all. I boosted up 3 decibels. I recorded it at minus 20 decibels. It's not really boosting it. But if you're boosting it a lot, then you probably want to EQ first because you're going to be boosting the frequencies that we're getting ready to pull out before you pull them out. It's kind of counterintuitive, but my first 2 compressors, I don't ever actually boost the audio with them. I boost later down the chain. So when you get to your first EQ, there is the same EQ that's in every single audio engineer and anybody who edits audio for a living. They have this whenever they're dealing with a voice. They have very similar EQ. And I'll go ahead and go over it with you right now. And just doing this will objectively make your voice sound better. The first thing you want to do is find your high pass filter. I think I need to equip mine here. Let me see if I can find it. Oh, there it is. Okay, so I'm changing this one to a high pass filter. What is a high pass filter? A high pass filter, it's confusing because it's on the low end side, but it's called a high pass filter. It's what high frequencies is it allowing to pass. That's how I remember high pass filter, and the low pass filter is the inverse of that. On a voice, you typically want this around 60. I find, especially on my voice, I know that works pretty well. And then I usually have a low Q, or a high Q, sorry. Q is a ratio, and it has to do with your bandwidth. So the higher your Q, the more narrow it'll be easier to show you actually on not a high pass filter. Let me grab 2 here. Let's focus on 2. So let's click on Q, and now if I raise the Q, it's going to make this more of a notch. See how narrow it is? And then if you lower it, it makes it wider. So typically, whenever you're doing a cut, which is when you're pulling out frequencies, pulling it down, you want a narrow Q. Usually I go for around 3.5, 3, 4. It just kind of depends on how much I'm pulling out. So that's what a Q is. Let's go back to the high pass filter really quick. I forgot to mention. So I usually set this at around 60 hertz. The reason why, and this is actually pretty important, there's nothing below 60 hertz that's important for anybody's voice, unless you maybe have a super low voice and you want a lot of bass. But even then, 60 hertz is pretty low, and a lot of background noise your mic will pick up in these lower frequencies, like air conditioners or a fan or bumping your desk or something like that. And what'll happen is if you don't cut those out before you start boosting your audio, those sub-ohm and those lower frequencies require more power from your speakers to actually play. So if you're boosting them, it'll actually make your entire recording sound quieter. And if any of your viewers have subwoofers or speakers that can play lower frequencies, it's going to sound really bad. So it's important to just cut it out right away. So somewhere around 60 hertz will work out well for pretty much any voice, really. I mean, you could go a little higher, you could go a little lower. And what I would recommend doing is put your recording on a loop and listen to it and bring this high pass filter up until you start noticing it, and then back it up a little bit so that you're not actually cutting out anything important. Now, the same thing goes over here. We'll do a low pass filter. We're going to do the same thing, just the inverse. For a voice, somewhere around 12,000, 13,000, you can put a low pass filter. I know from editing my voice so much that these are good frequencies, but again, I would recommend kind of just real quick, just listen to what you're doing, try to hear the edits, and as soon as you start hear it cutting out the higher frequencies, back it up a little bit so you don't accidentally cut out too much. Again, I can give you like the starting points, which is 60 hertz for the high pass filter and 13,000 hertz for the low pass filter, but you should still do your due diligence to try to get it perfect for whatever voice you're editing. That whole process is how you become better at this. Okay, so that's high pass filter, low pass filter. Next, we're going to do a couple cuts. I'm going to add another one of these nodes in here. These are usually called bands, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is where we start editing the sound, really. The high pass filter, low pass filter are more precautionary. This is where we start actually making it sound better. There are some frequencies that every studio owner, audio engineer, professional knows about for a voice. Before we start raising the volume and boosting anything, we want to cut all of these harsh frequencies out. So I usually started around 500, and then again, you want to listen to it while you're doing this. So let's put something on a loop here. And then we want to do a narrow Q. That's not quite narrow enough for me, so I'm going to make it a little bit more narrow. Let's do 6, sure. All right, then we're going to listen for it. I'm going to listen for the harsh frequencies. I'm going to be scanning back and forth like this until I find it, and then we're going to pull it down and cut it. So let's listen. You haven't really done much with audio. This is going to be like a beginner level to building a foundation, kind of learning the basics of editing audio so that it's not quite as intimidating. I say right about there. And we're going to listen to it while we pull it down as well. You haven't really done much with audio. This is going to be like a beginner level to building a foundation and kind of learning the basics of editing. Where did I end up cutting that at? 580 hertz. That's where I was hearing an annoying sound or frequency. And I knew that in that frequency from editing my voice so much, as well as just knowing that that's a common frequency, that's where you usually start out. And when we're done here, this is going to be a very common looking first EQ for anybody's vocal chain ever. This is really common stuff right now that we're doing. So it's important to learn these steps. So next, I'm going to go into the 1000 hertz area, and let's find this harsh frequency. You haven't really done much with audio. This is going to be like a beginner level to building a foundation and kind of learning the basics of editing audio so that it's not quite as intimidating and you haven't really... There, right about there. So let's pull this down and listen to it as we pull it down. You haven't really done much with audio. This is going to be like a beginner level to building a foundation and kind of learning the basics of editing audio so that it's... Okay. Next one is around 2000. Do the same thing. You haven't really done much with audio. This is going to be like a beginner level to building a foundation and kind of learning the basics. You can really hear it right here. You haven't really done much with audio. This is going to be like a... So we're going to cut that down. You haven't really done much with audio. This is going to be like a beginner level to building a foundation. Just go right there. We like to go subtle. I can always cut out more later with another EQ. So this is, we made a cut at 1,000, a cut at 2,000. Those are the common ones, somewhere around 750, stuff like that, around 500. If your voice is sounding really nasally, and that's usually around between 250 and 350 hertz, somewhere in there, that's where you would start looking. You don't just make a cut at 300 and be like, okay, it's good. You should try to train your ear and actually listen for it by boosting it so that you can find it and then cut it out. And that is a big part of becoming good at EQing. your sound will become better if you learn how to edit it properly. You can spend a bunch of money on plugins, but your audio is still not going to sound good if you don't know how to use your tools. Pretty much is what I'm trying to get at. So I'm going to throw in the EQ that I usually use, and that's this one right here. This is called F6. Again, I got it from Waves. And what I'll usually do is I'll go ahead and add another high pass, and then we'll go to another low pass, and I'll bring that around 13.5. These are just precautionary things. I do this pretty much in every single EQ whenever I'm EQing voices, because I want none of those frequencies. I don't just want to make those frequencies quieter. I want to mute them entirely. So, and it's a nice habit to form. So let's go ahead and listen to it and see if I can find some more frequencies that I want to cut out. I'll try to find some, and then I'll be back with you guys. All right, I went back through. I found another frequency here really close to 2000 that I really don't like. So I'm going to be cutting it out as well. How I make my voice sound professional. And I thought that I would go ahead and take some time and show you guys how I make my voice. You see how when you boost it, it kind of hurts your ears a little bit? That's what I mean. It's a harsh frequency, and your voice will be better off with it off. Now, it's important that you don't cut out too much, or else your voice will really start sounding muddy, and it'll have no high end. It'll start sounding unnatural and weird. So you need to make sure that you're staying subtle, but you can safely cut these frequencies down by like 6 decibels, sometimes even 9 if you have a really high Q. Not high IQ, just a high Q, so that you have a really narrow notch cut, basically. But I'm going to now listen to it while I decide how much I'm going to pull out here. Professional. And I thought that I would go ahead and take some time and show you guys how I make my... I usually pull it down until I don't hear that harsh sound anymore. All right, so I found another frequency around 750, which is another common harsh frequency for voices. And I've done a small cut here. I didn't do quite as narrow of a cut here because this whole area between 750 and like 450 sounds pretty bad. So I wanted to do a little wider cut there. I don't usually do a wide cut, but for my voice, it works out well. So I did another one there. I'll let you guys listen to this with this EQ on and off and see if you can spot the difference. Again, it's subtle, but this is our second EQ. So now they're stacking on top of each other. How I make my voice sound professional. And I thought that I would go ahead and take some time and show you guys how I make my voice sound professional. And I thought that I would go ahead and take some time and show you guys. It's very subtle, but it definitely sounds better, especially making that cut at 2K. When I turn off the EQ, it's really noticeable. I hear it right away myself. I know that it sounds better, so I'll proceed. I always want to make sure that I know that it's sounding better. I don't want to just do it on a hunch, because that's when you start having issues and you really start kicking yourself. So make sure it sounds better, and always do something going into it with a purpose. All right, so now I'm going to add another compressor because I've cut out the harsh frequencies. Now I'm ready to start boosting it up just a little bit, subtly boosting it up as we go. I'm probably going to add a couple more compressors before we're completely done here. So I'm going to go ahead and get this going. I can show you how I like to do that. Let me find a spot that we haven't listened to in a while. Here, let's go back to the beginning right here. There's some loud spots here and some quiet spots. Hey guys, how's it going? My name's Babs. Thanks for stopping by the channel. This is going to be a bit different type of video than I normally put up on my channel. Usually I'm a gaming channel, not a tips and tricks channel, but every now and then I like to peel back the curtain. This is going to be a bit different type of video than I normally put up on my channel. Usually I'm... All right, so I got that one set up pretty good. I'm pretty happy with it. I'm trying to run through this a little quicker, so I'd probably spend a little bit more time on it if I wasn't trying to make a video right now, but I think that's good. So next up, I am noticing a little bit of nasaliness, so I want to add another EQ just to take care of that. So nasaliness, I told you guys earlier, that's around 300, 250 somewhere, but to know for sure, we're going to listen to it and boost around there until I hear it. I'm going to try to hone in on that frequency that's making the noise that I don't like, and then I'll try to pull it down. Hey guys, how's it going? My name's Babs. Thanks for stopping by the channel. This is going to be a bit different type of video than I normally put up on my channel. Usually I'm a gaming channel, not a tips and tricks channel, but every now and then I like to peel back the... I say right about there, so I'm going to pull that down. Hey guys, how's it going? My name's Babs. Thanks for stopping by the channel. This is going to be a bit different type of video than I normally put up on my channel. All right, so now I've made another cut. I'll go ahead and add my high pass and low pass just because that's just a habit that I like to be in, so that I never forget. And I'm going to do something crazy here now. we know what compressors are. We know what equalizers are. This is actually a parametric compressor. So it's a combination of the two. Each one of these bands I can change into its own little compressor, and it'll only compress the frequency, which is a pretty cool tool. Now, unfortunately, I don't think any softwares really come with these by default. So this is something you would probably have to purchase. But I will say it's not something that you have to get studio quality sound. And in fact, mostly this is just something I use out of convenience. When I have like a half-hour long video, I like it to automate pretty much. Whenever I make like an S sound or anything that is like a harsh frequency, I will like this to be automating. But even so, if I skip this step entirely, it's not that much more noticeable, and I don't think it's an important thing for most people to have. I don't want you to feel discouraged because you would have to buy a parametric compressor, but I still think they're really cool. And now that maybe you came into this video not knowing what a compressor was or what it did, and same thing with an equalizer, and now you know what they are, and now you see that there's a tool that actually combines them. It's really cool. So what I like to do, and this is something I do in all my videos, I will usually add this right around 4K. Right now, there isn't any harshness there. I don't hear any issues with 4K. What I'm doing right here is forward thinking. At the end of my chain, I always boost my highs with a high shelf. That way you get that crispy, colorful, airy sound. That sounds really good. But there's a lot of harsh frequencies around somewhere in that range. It'll knock the enamel off your teeth if you boost it too high. So I want to make sure it stays under control. I'll also put one of these on 8K, which works as a de-esser, which I'm going to be going over what de-essers are. It's kind of in the title, but I'm going to be using some of them here in a bit. But basically, whenever you make an S sound or a T sound, you got a high frequency sound, and that's usually around 8K and 4K. So these will, whenever I'm going to set the threshold so that they only really push down whenever I'm making those harsh sounds. That way it automatically reduces that frequency whenever I make an S sound, T sound, or whenever that frequency kind of gets out of hand. So I'm going to go ahead and set this up, and then I'll come back and show you guys. All right, so I think I got these set up. So what I did here is I got a very narrow notch on 8K because it's really just, in my voice and my S's, it's right around 8, maybe a little bit below, maybe like 7,900, right around there. That's where my S's are, that harsh frequency is. So I've done a really narrow notch here, and I've set my threshold down here, you can see it. And I went and I listened, and whenever the S's come up, you'll see this fills up a little bit more. So I set my threshold right around that area. So it's really only hitting during those parts of the audio. And then this one, I told you, right around this area is another harsh frequency. Right now, it doesn't sound harsh, but I'm just doing forward thinking. If you're doing this for the first time, you would probably boost your highs, and then you'd be like, it still sounds harsh, and then you'd pull back 4K. That's another way you could go about it. But I like to do my cuts before I do any boosting. So that's all just personal preference and subjective. But I'll show you what this kind of looks like. Hey guys, how's it going? My name's Babs. Thanks for stopping by the channel. This is going to be a bit different type of video than I normally put up on my channel. Usually I'm a gaming channel, not a tips and tricks channel, but every now and then I like to, so you can kind of see it bouncing up and down. Now when I go to boost it, I know that those frequencies are under control. All right. So now I'm going to add one more equalizer just to do one more little thing before I start boosting stuff. And I'm going to do what is called a high shelf. Every equalizer is a little bit different, but it's called a shelf whenever you can kind of tell why it's called that. But I'm not actually boosting anything. Again, I want to make sure that my high frequencies are under control before I boost them. So if at any point throughout the video, whenever the high frequencies get too loud, I'm going to put a compressor on this shelf so that it brings them down and make sure they're under control. That way, nobody's ears hurt when I boost the highs, and I can get a nice crisp sound. This is kind of just something that I've learned to do with my voice through experience, and it works out best. And it's nice and quick, and it's all automated because I'm using a parametric compressor. All right, so I got this one set up. I'll let you listen to it here. You can kind of see what it's doing. Hey guys, how's it going? My name's Babs. Thanks for stopping by the channel. This is going to be a bit different type of video than I normally put up on my channel. Usually I'm a gaming channel, not a tips and so you can see it's only kicking in whenever the high frequencies are kind of boosted. kind of just keeping them under control, not really changing the sound at all. You can listen to this with on and off, and it's really hard to distinguish the on and offs. This is just a really subtle thing that I like to do before I boost anything. I think we've kind of taken care of all the harsh frequencies about as good as we could do. I probably could do better if I spent some more time on it, but for the sake of time, I'm going to start getting into the fun phase. We've done the repair phase. So the first thing I would do is probably go ahead and start boosting the bass a little bit. So another equalizer here. My voice right around 100 hertz. That's where the bass is good. So I will always add another high pass for this one because we're boosting low and we don't want to boost too low. We're boosting low end. You don't want to boost it too much. You don't want to go crazy with bass. Bass isn't what makes voices sound good. That's a very common mistake that people make, but a little bit of bass is good. So let's listen to this. I'm going to do this with the recording pause because I'm going to actually use my studio monitors so I can use my subwoofer because the headphones I'm wearing don't have very good bass. So I'll be right back. So I've just boosted it here, just around 100 hertz. I did another small cut at 500 because I felt like that's what it needed. I did a small cut here just after my bass boost on this number 3 dot here because I wanted to make sure I wasn't boosting anything around 200, 250. I don't want it to start sounding muddy, so I pulled that back a little bit. So it's only boosting here. I also put a little bit of compression on it just so it doesn't ever get too loud. Again, just to automate things a little bit. Don't necessarily need to do that. And I did another small cut here around 3000 because it was starting to sound a little harsh there to me. So let's listen to it. How I make my voice sound professional. And I thought that I would go ahead and take some time and show you guys my process for editing audio, as well as trying to give, so we got a little bass in there now. Let's get into the next part, which is this is where I start getting into subjective territory. What sounds good, what doesn't sound good. We're going to be talking about saturation, and I usually put it in around here, but saturation, basically it distorts the audio a little bit and you get it just to where you can barely hear it and then you kind of blend it in. Some people would say saturation just makes the vocal not sound clean. It sounds a little bit more crunchy, and it's true. That is true. It just kind of depends on what you're going for, whose voice you're dealing with, and your personal preference. I always add a little tiny bit of saturation to all of my audio, or all of my voice audio, because I like it. As long as it's really subtle and you're not overdoing it, it can make things sound really nice, and it can kind of be that special sauce. Fortunately, again, saturation, there aren't really, I don't think there's any softwares that include a saturation VST by default. So unfortunately, that's something that you would either need to purchase or see if you could Google and find a free one. That may be possible. I don't know of any, unfortunately. I will show you the plugin that I use. What I use is this here, Abbey Road Saturator. And this one comes with some pre-EQs, post-EQ. It comes with a bunch of different things. I'm not going to go too much into saturation because, again, this isn't something that you can really do for free, kind of like the parametric compressor. But this is something that I use, and I want to show my entire process for editing my audio. So initially, it's going to sound really good. Just listen to it. How I make my voice sound professional. And I thought that I would go ahead and take some time and show you. Sounds really crisp and clear, right? So this is the problem a lot of people run into as beginners, is they're like, oh, that sounds really good, and they like boost it. And the problem with that is over the course of an entire video, your viewers are going to start getting headaches because it's too much. And it's really important that you stay subtle with this, or just don't use it at all. Again, I pull this way down. I'm going to listen to it while I determine how much saturation I want to add. Hey guys, how's it going? My name's Babs. Thanks for stopping by the channel. This is going to be a bit different type of video than I normally put up on my channel. Usually I'm a gaming channel, not a tips and tricks channel. But every now and then I like to peel back the curtain. All right, so I think I'm set here. I pulled back the gain a little bit. I blended it to 50%, and then I mixed it to 40. And I did a little bit of EQ. I pulled out a little bit more of 1K. I just did another cut. This is another equalizer. Since we saw the other equalizer, we kind of know what it's doing. This is a high shelf. This is a low shelf. And this is just somewhere in the middle. You set the frequency right here. Right now I have it set to about 1,000 frequency, or 1,000 hertz. And I'm pulling it out by 3 decibels. And then I also boosted. I did a high shelf here at 1.3 decibels, and I pulled out about 1.5 decibels at 2.5K. And I did a small boost to the bass, 1 decibel. Very subtle stuff that I just thought that it needed. This is what it sounds like. So I will turn it off and I'll throw it in about halfway through. Hey guys, how's it going? My name's Babs. Thanks for stopping by the channel. This is going to be a bit different type of video than I normally put up on my channel. Usually I'm a gaming channel, not a tips and tricks channel. But every now and then I like to peel back the curtain, give you a look under the hood, kind of show you what's going on behind the scenes. Yeah, again, you got to be really careful with saturation. It can sound really good as long as you know to be subtle with it and don't do too much. All right, and then after all that, I'll usually add one more compressor. We'll just do another R comp, just another subtle compressor. But what we're doing is over the course of these, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. This is going to be the 4th compressor. So what we've been doing is compressing the really loud sounds and boosting the really quiet sounds. So what this does, this is one of the tricks of a compressor. When you're talking, the end of your words get quieter until eventually there's no sound coming out of your mouth. So what this is doing is we're boosting it until the very end. More words are more articulated. So by adding 4 compressors in my vocal chain, I've now boosted the ends of the words to where you can start hearing that clarity a little bit, kind of giving you that crispy sound. That, and then just doing a high shelf and boosting the highs, which is what I'm going to do next. All of that kind of gives you that crispy, professional sound. Hey guys, how's it going? My name's Babs. Thanks for stopping by the channel. This is going to be a bit different type of video than I normally put up on my channel. Usually I'm a gaming channel, not a tips and tricks channel. All right. You need to make sure that we're not getting too loud here. So I have at the bottom of my DAW down here, this is a gauge. When I'm ready to export, I want my voice at the highest points to be around -6 decibels. So I'm always keeping my eye on this gauge. So if we look here. Hey guys, how's it going? My name's Babs. Thanks for stopping by the channel. I'm at around -12 decibels at my highest points. So I'm nowhere near my max. We will get to our max at the very end, but we want to make sure we're never peaking any of our software. You want to mix quietly. Somewhere around -12 is pretty good for the phase that we're in. I'm pretty happy with that. So next, again, before I start really boosting the high end, I'm still worried about the S's. Some people, they just boost the high end and it sounds good, but the S's, if you have sensitive ears like I do, it hurts to listen to. So I'm always super mindful about my S's and trying to keep them under control. So I always add a couple de-essers. So what is a de-esser? I know that Premiere Pro comes with a de-esser. I assume that it's not super uncommon, but what a de-esser is you already know what it does. You know what a parametric compressor is now. So all of this is it's only one band, and it has nice presets around the frequencies where typically the harsh S sounds are. I know from my voice it's around 8K, and then around 4K, and then sometimes around 5, 6K. So I will usually do my first one at 8K. Hey guys, how's it going? My name's Babs. Thanks for stopping by the channel. This is going to be a bit different type of video than I normally put up on my channel. Usually I'm a gaming channel, not a tips and tricks channel. And I usually try to get that to hit around -9 decibels, as long as it's only during the S's. You don't want that pulling stuff out when you're just talking normally, because it'll really start making your voice sound flat. And it could cause problems down the road. So I usually add one more on top of this at a different frequency. And I've already done a little bit of this with some of my EQing before, but this is where I'm doing most of the de-essing. Babs, thanks for stopping by the channel. This is going to be a bit different type of video. Okay, so I went ahead and did a cut closer to 6K because I've already done a cut, if you remember before, around 4K. So I don't want to cut too much out of 4K. The 8K, 5K, 6K, these are like the ones that actually hurt your ears, these frequencies. 4K is more of an annoying frequency, at least for me. Like, these are my opinions. But yeah, I did a cut there close to 6K, and we're done with the de-essing now. So next, I will usually add my gate here because I do a lot of whispering and talking. Kind of, I walk away from my microphone and I keep talking to it. And these are things that I don't want the gate to cut out. If you don't know what a gate is, it's a lot like a compressor. Let me pull one up. I usually just use this gate. It's one that came with Samplitude. Actually, one thing you can do for fun, let's find a really quiet part. Let me zoom in. But what we can do is I can boost the audio up, and now it's a lot louder. And now we can listen to what the gate's doing. So here's with the gate on. And I'm going to turn it off. So we can definitely tell the gate's doing its job. If I'm getting a ton of background noise, I'll usually put the gate earlier and then set the threshold really low because I'm going to be boosting the audio throughout the chain and making the quiet stuff louder. So if there's a lot of background noise, I want to try to set it so that it's a little bit easier to distinguish between when I'm whispering or talking quietly and I have room noise in the back. Again, that's kind of ties into the whole mic etiquette thing. You don't really want a loud fan blowing in the background, especially if you're trying to get studio quality or professional sounding audio, because once you boost everything, you're going to start hearing that stuff. But yeah, after the gate, I would say for this piece, I would call this done. I think it sounds pretty good. I haven't mastered it yet, which will get it a little bit better when I master it. But I told you I want to get at that -6 decibels when I'm all said and done. And right now we're at, let's look. But every now and then I like to peel back the curtain. We're still at around -12. So this is where the limiter comes into play. What a limiter is it's kind of like a compressor again, except for it sets a ceiling, whereas a compressor will allow things to go above the threshold. It just compresses them. A limiter will not let anything go past whatever you set here. And it's actually kind of interesting because the limiter is in some ways kind of like a parametric compressor, where it'll only actually limit the frequencies that are crossing your ceiling that you've set. So it raises the other frequencies that aren't quite at the ceiling. It makes things sound louder than they really are. You can really mess up your audio by making it too loud. It just sounds bad. But what you want to do is you kind of want the loudest parts to touch your limiter, just the loudest parts. And then this threshold on the limiter kind of works as a volume control, except for it's the opposite. When you pull it down, it makes it louder. So I told you we're trying to aim for -6, so I'll set my ceiling to -6. I'll set my threshold to -6. And then as we go, I'm going to pull this down and it's going to make it louder and louder and louder. And I'll try to get to a loud part and I want to see it touching the ceiling. And you'll see a little bar come down here whenever it's actually limiting. That way I know I'm right at 6 at the loudest parts. So let's go ahead and hit play. This is going to be like a beginner level to building a foundation, audio or making videos or audio. All right, I'd say that's probably good. We're right around -6. If I look down here again, let's start it right here. We're trying to get around -6, which is right about here. My process for editing audio, as well as trying to give right at -6. So I am happy with that. At this point, I would normally I'd go back through and tweak everything a little bit now that it's a little bit louder and I can hear it, but I'm kind of running out of time and I think it sounds a lot better. Let's go ahead and listen to it before and after, before we export it and master it. Unfortunately, one of the things here is it's going to be a lot louder, so it's going to sound better automatically. I could try to gain match it. Let me try to gain match it. All right, so I've done some gain matching. So what I'll do here is I'm going to play it without any of the processing that we've done today. And I've boosted the volume so that it doesn't sound louder. Once we turn on the plugins, I'll pull the volume back down to normal so they're at the same loudness so that you're truly hearing how much it sounds better. Because just making something louder doesn't make it sound better. So let's go ahead and play. But every now and then I like to peel back the curtain, give you a look under the hood, kind of show you what's going on behind the scenes. I get asked a lot how I edit my audio or what software I use. And here's another spot. You know, you're trying to get into editing audio or making videos, or maybe you're really good at editing videos, but you haven't really done much. All right, and now here's with everything. But every now and then I like to peel back the curtain, give you a look under the hood, kind of show you what's going on behind the scenes. I get asked a lot how I edit my audio or what software I use, how I make my voice sound professional. And I thought that I would go ahead and take some time and show you guys my process. So it sounds a lot better. I could probably have made this sound even better yet if I had spent a little bit more time on it. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and export this and then master it. That's a real quick process that I do. I'm not like doing like a true master, maybe if you've heard of mastering and stuff. Like it's kind of, you would ship your song or your album to a studio and they would master it for you, the professionals who actually know what they're doing, unlike me. And but what I do is I'm going to bring it up to my -2 decibels, which is where I want my final product to be. I'm going to add a little bit more EQ, a little bit more compression, and make sure everything still sounds good after exporting, because we're adding a lot of processing here. And during the exporting process, things can change a little bit, and I try to make it sound like it does here after the exports. All right, so here is my file after exporting it as a wave. You can see here there's a lot less dynamics. Everything's more under control. You don't want to see a rectangle here. That means that you have applied way too much limiting. It's probably sounding distorted and just bad overall. You want to see something like this. This is a very healthy looking wave file. If we look at the before wave file, let me make this a little bit bigger. So you can see here, there's some really quiet spots, some really loud spots. It's a lot of spikiness. You can literally tell what the compressor did. All right, guys, I went ahead and did a little bit of processing here, just very, very subtle stuff. Ideally, I've already done all of my major changes before I exported it. So I just like to add a little bit of the high end back in here. I'm using this as another EQ. I just recently got this plugin and I'm still trying to decide whether or not I like it. It does add just a little bit of artificial distortion. I'm not sure if I like it or not, but I've been using it. Sometimes I really like it. Sometimes I feel like it is too much. You can see here 0.1. I've boosted a high shelf at 0.1, very subtle. I've pulled back the mids by 0.2. Mids would be around 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 hertz. And I boosted the lows by 0.1, and I added a high pass filter at 50 hertz. So nothing too crazy. I'll let you guys listen to it before and after. Here's with it off, and then I'll throw it on after a couple seconds. Asked a lot how I edit my audio or what software I use, how I make my voice sound professional. Very subtle, very, very subtle. Then I added another really light compression because I wanted to boost the gain up. So before we exported, we said we were trying to hit -6 decibels. Now that I'm mastering, my goal is to reach -2 decibels. That's my absolute That's my absolute max, because it leaves me with 2 decibels of headroom so that there's never any distortion. So that's what I always aim for as a final product. So you can see this is barely doing anything. Mostly I just wanted to go ahead and turn it up a little bit by running it through a compressor. Asked a lot how I edit my audio or what software I use, how I make my voice sound professional. Okay. And then I added a high shelf here. Usually at the very end of my voice chain, I forgot to do this, but I would usually add a high shelf and boost the highs a little bit, but I forgot to do that. So I went ahead and did that here. Normally I wouldn't do that on a master because my master is going to have my voice, my game, and my music all on one track. But since this is all just my voice, it's essentially the same thing, so it's no big deal. Instead of re-exporting it, I just added it here, which is fine. And I also put some parametric compression on the low end. I did a low shelf here. This is a low shelf. So this low shelf, I have it set to 0 gain, so it's not doing anything. And then it's just, I've set a threshold with the compression, so it's pulling down the low end whenever it gets a little bit too loud. And then I boosted the high end, and I put cuts. Here, there was a frequency I didn't like, so I put a cut there, and there's a cut at 8,000 just to control the S's. So I'll let you guys listen to this on and off. And I thought that I would go ahead and take some time and show you guys my... Just kind of helps with the clarity a little bit, I think. Okay, and then I added our limiter to try to get it up to that -2 decibels that we're trying to hit. So pretty much final product. Asked a lot how my process for editing audio. And that's pretty much it. So at this point, I'll go ahead and master this. Or not master, export this, and it would be finished. This is just one little example. Usually I would have game audio, music, sound effects, Discord audio, some friends' voices in there. And I need to make all of that work together. it's a lot harder work. So that's what I plan on doing the next part of this series, is going over one of my videos. I think I'm going to do the Star Citizen video where I showed my brother Matt Star Citizen, because I'm really proud with how the audio in that video turned out. I really like it. I think it's one of my best sounding videos that I've made. There's a couple other that I'm really proud of as well, but then there's some that I'm not so proud of. And then I'll also be fixing my brother's audio that he sent to me, his whole video, and I'll be fixing that. So that's going to be in part 2. For now, part 1 is pretty much over. I hope you guys enjoyed it. You took something out of it. Editing audio, for whatever reason, is something that I just get really excited about and enthusiastic about. I don't necessarily think I'm the best in the world or anything like that. I know that I understand the basics, and I know how to use all of my tools, and I like teaching other people, especially people that are interested in it but don't know where to start, or maybe they're intimidated by it, and I want to show them it's not that intimidating. You just kind of have to start doing it. Just start messing around with audio, record yourself, try to make your voice sound good by using some of the tips that I showed you here. And yeah, and if you're not really interested in editing audio yourself, hopefully you enjoyed the behind the scenes look of my channel and what I go through with every video. Every video I get a little bit better, and that's kind of what it's all about. So thanks for watching the video, guys. If you enjoyed it, give the video a like, give me a subscribe to support the channel. Part 2 will be in the link below if it's been uploaded yet. So go on over there, check it out. I'll meet you guys over there. Bye, guys.
Asked a lot.
Oh, shoot. I hit spacebar. Every now and then I like to peel back the curtain, give you a look under the hood at kind of what goes on behind the scenes, and what I've learned over the course of editing videos and editing audio. Every now and then I like to peel back the curtain, give you a look under the hood at kind of what goes on behind the scenes, and what I've learned over the course of editing videos and editing audio.